Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. Today, we're going to talk a bit about the NBA's tiers. Where does each team actually fall? Kind of a almost power rankings-esque adventure here that we're going to get into. But we also have a bit of news to talk about, specifically Team USA. Kawhi Leonard, goodbye. Hello, Derek White. What does that mean for the squad? We'll talk a bit about that. And the Pistons make a move. So a lot of stuff for us to dive into today. Keith, I'm just excited that we've got Summer League games going on. We've got Team USA stuff's happening. We've got all kinds of basketball, and it's July. This is fantastic.
Yeah, man, it was funny. I was doing a radio spot, and somebody asked me. They said, "Does someone come along now and like turn off your off switch?" And I was like, "No, that'll happen in August after the Olympics ends." Like, just there's still a lot going on right now. It's funny. I was explaining to a friend of mine who like understands like that I cover the league and cover transactions, but he's like, all right. So he's like, I heard the other day that free agency's kind of over. And I said, yeah, but now like all the actual deal details come in and like that keeps me hopping and busy and all that stuff. So it's it's a busy time of year and I love it. But yeah, it's been great to have summer league games to throw on at night while I'm working on stuff. And you kind of those you don't need to be super locked in on, all the time. And it's kind of like, especially if I'm watching for like a certain guy, it's like, okay, checked out. I can now go, focus on doing
he
this.
Checks out, I check out.
Exactly. Then I'll come back in when he comes back in. So yeah, it's great, man. I love it. Yeah, I'm just excited. We got basketball really for the next month or so of just summer league and then the Olympics straight on through until the middle of August.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Team USA. Kawhi Leonard, I mean, Keith, we've been talking about this for a while now about we weren't sure how healthy Kawhi actually is, whether or not he can play for Team USA. I know there were some positive news reports about his health and how there was no minutes restriction and all that stuff. And now here we are. Kawhi Leonard withdraws from Team USA in order to try to fully heal up. Not ideal. I mean, from a team perspective, not ideal for a United States that definitely needs wing stoppers. Now, we'll talk about Derek White replacing him as well and why that pick, I think, made perfect sense. And the defensive side is certainly part of it. But disappointing because given his age and injury history, this was probably Kawhi's last shot at the Olympics.
Yeah, I would say for sure. Yeah, and I think for Kawhi, it probably felt pretty good coming in. And then there's been a little bit of mixed reporting. We're hearing some that it was Kawhi's side that was like, hey, can we talk about this? Some talk that the Clippers were involved. My guess was probably a little bit of everybody. And Team USA probably looked at it and said, hey, we do not want to find ourselves in Paris. Kawhi's out. And then we've got guys like Joel Embiid, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, all very often pick up injuries. Kevin Durant's already hurting. Now all of a sudden it's like half the roster. Potentially we've got to worry about a little bit. I think you're in a spot where it's if you're not sure, let's move on. Let's get somebody in here who we're fairly certain will be available, will be able to go. That's one of Derek White's best abilities is that he doesn't miss time. He always plays. So yeah, I think this is a really good pickup. I made the point when it was before it was officially announced. I think it was Mark Spears, one of the first people I saw say Derek White's going to be the guy. And the point I made was Derek White is one, he can really defend guards. This team doesn't have a lot of guard defenders out there. He can defend up against a lot of wings, as can Drew Holiday. But Derek White's also not going to complain if he's the 12th man and he's playing 5 minutes a night. Like he's just going to kind of do whatever is asked of him. That's why like people who are like, why are they not bringing Kyrie Irving or Jalen Brunson? And I'm not saying those guys would complain. Those aren't guys you just put on the end of the bench and say, hey, you happy to be here? Like fit matters, chemistry matters. A lot of Celtics fans are upset because they felt like it should be Jaylen Brown. He's the same size as Kawhi. He does a lot of the same things as Kawhi. One, we don't know if Jaylen Brown wants to play. Yes, I saw his tweet. I don't know what that's in reference to. I'm sure he'll explain it later. He generally does, and he usually comes back with, that wasn't anything to do with what y'all thought it was, and whether it did or didn't, who knows. But Jaylen Brown is also, I think he's halfway around the world right now. Last I saw, he was in like Paris and then in Japan. I don't even know where he is right now. So I don't know that he was jumping at the chance either to join up. But I think Derek White is a fine replacement for what this team needs and for how the chemistry of just another guy who's not going to, grumble at all if he's not playing very much.
Here's the problem, and it's the same reason why when we look at a team, we typically default to whoever the 5 best players are, that's the starting 5, right? Which is not always the case in the NBA. Oftentimes it is, but not always, because fit does matter when you're looking for specific skill sets. You think back to Manu Ginobili. Was he one of the 5 best Spurs? Easily, no question. But he came off the bench because that was what was best for the team in terms of utilizing his skill set. When you look at Team USA, you could just automatically go to the next best player on the list and say, okay, you're coming onto the roster. And that's what triggered a chorus of but whatabouts around in sports fandom. Well, what about Brunson? What about Jaylen Brown? What about whoever? All the other guys that you want to throw in there. People said, what about Kyrie? What about they need defense. They need defensive players, lockdown defensive players that are super switchy. You could say Jaylen Brown, does he fit that role potentially? But I think I'd argue that you need a guard defender more than anything else. And between Derek White and Jaylen Brown, which one's best suited to defend guards? It's probably Derek White. I think Kawhi Leonard gets the nod on this team because he's Kawhi Leonard, because that comes with some stature. Is a wing defender specifically what you need? No, you really need another guy who can be switchy and defend guards. And so that's what you're getting by bringing in Derek White. And he can defend wings too. But I do like that he can do a little bit of everything. And nobody's going to say anything if he winds up being the 11th, 12th man or whatever and doesn't wind up playing in a particular game. Whereas if it's Jaylen Brown, it's going to be, well, why did you even bring him? Now he's not going to play. And all this stuff's going to happen. I think Derek White is that guy that just fits in. He can be the glue guy. He can do all the stuff that the team needs. And I think they're going to need him when you're dealing with some of these high-quality, speedy guards that some of these foreign teams have. And it's not easy because that's been a weakness of Team USA for years now. So you have to account for fit when you're making this selection. And I think that's where Derek White makes sense, even though he might not be on the same level as some of the other options.
Yeah, I look at it in the group stage. Puerto Rico. I'm not pulling the Chuck Daly and trying to tell the dream team that, like, hey, you got to be careful. These guys might actually challenge you. And then like Jordan and Bird and Magic laugh at him and go back to playing cards or whatever they were doing. I think you look at it though, Tremont Waters and Jose Alvarado, 2 small, quick, fast guards. Who defends them right now on this team? Now, sure, you're going to be like, who cares? Like, I don't care if they're running around like crazy when we're scoring on them on every trip. Sure, that there is truth to that. But if it falls into a spot where it's like, we just need to stop, at least you can put Derek White, Drew Holiday on them and say, hey, can you go lock them down for the next 2 minutes while we go? It was funny. Somebody tweeted, I wish I could remember who it was because what the tweet was, everybody's complaining about why are Kyrie Irving or Jalen Brunson not on the squad because they get buckets. And they're like, yeah, because there's nobody on this team that can go get a bucket. Like that should be a major problem for this group, right? Like,
exactly.
Like that's the thing. You're looking to fill out some skill sets, there. So yeah, is Derek White a first name you think of for a Olympic team? No, absolutely he's not. But I think Derek White is somebody you do look at and say, you know what? Hey, Derek White's actually pretty good. Fills a role. Mm-hmm. Let's move forward that way.
Absolutely. All right. In fact, I even just made the case over on the Basketball Bulletin. I just published a video a bit ago about who the starting 5 should be. And I made my argument for Drew Holiday in place of Anthony Edwards in the start, which I would never, right? I mean, Drew Holiday and Anthony Edwards are not on the same level as players, but in terms of who fits in the starting lineup, you can make a case, assuming it's going to be LeBron, KD, Embiid, and Curry as the other 4, that Drew Holiday makes the most sense in the starting lineup to be that defensive guy that can help you out on the boards, that can defend guys on the perimeter. Derek White can fill a similar role there, and so that's something I think is important for Team USA. So again, a lot of people upset, but I get it. I get it. Fit matters in international play now for the U.S. That's just the reality of the situation. We're no longer in that era where you could just roll a ball out and the U.S. is going to overwhelm teams with star power. They can still do it to some teams, but fit matters now more than ever for Team USA.
Yeah, these guys are not interrupting pregame warmups to take pictures, take team pictures with Team USA.
Right.
Like that's just not a thing. So yeah, that's that was a thing in 1992. It's not a thing in 2024 anymore.
All right, let's jump to one transaction that did happen. The Pistons claim Paul Reed. Is this just them being opportunistic? Are you surprised at this decision by the Pistons? Do they have a need for Reed?
Well done.
Oh no, I stumbled into that.
I like it. They really, their only two bigs of note on the roster right now are Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart. Obviously, you need more, in the mix there, and I think Paul Reed comes in and can be right in that rotation with those three the other two guys. And that's a pretty nice three big rotation for teams that's trying to build up. Paul Reed's also young enough where, let's say he really pops, and you're like, man, we really like him. We want to move him forward. He's young enough that he can fit with the young core that you're building around. They did get the Cade Cunningham extension done, like we talked about. So now you're kind of starting to lock into, all right, we've got our couple guys here. Let's start to figure it out, beyond those guys. It's funny. I just finished the Eastern Conference cap space projections for next summer. Because like you kind of move into, all right, where could some of these teams be going? Because it can help set the stage for the upcoming season. I don't have Detroit as a cap space team next year because they've got Cunningham's extension kicking in. You have Tobias Harris on the books for another year. So you've got some big money that they're carrying into next year. So when you start to look at it, it's like, yeah, take advantage now. Paul Reed's probably, I'm not even going to say probably, he was the best big available that could have been there. And they kept him from even getting to the free agent market because he probably would have had a ton of offers from teams that need a big. And instead, Detroit gets them. So, yeah, I'm all on board for this one for the Pistons. I think that's a really good pickup for Detroit.
And here's what the Pistons cap sheet looks like for the future here.
And we'll get Paul Reed on there. We're
sure.
We're like a touch behind on getting stuff updated.
Understandable this time of year, no question. But that's a whole lot of red for next summer for the Pistons to work through.
Yeah, now a lot of that will come out in October because a lot of those are rookie scale team options. They have to be decided on by Halloween, so those will get done. But there's flexibility there, but there's more money on the books now than there has been in previous years.
All right, let's jump over to, let's go here before we get into our tier ranking system here. Jontay Porter pleads guilty. This actually just broke while we were doing the show. Wasn't worth hitting the breaking news button, of course. But Keith, what's the deal here, and what does this mean for Jontay Porter?
Yeah, so this was not an unexpected thing. His representatives had said he was going to plead guilty, that he is working with authorities on what happened with not only his gambling, but basically trying to defraud various betting companies through match fixing, essentially is what they call it. So he's pleading guilty, and it's come out like he was apparently heavily in debt. I don't know how heavily. Are we talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars? I don't know, but was extremely deep into debt. That's how he started working with some of these people. That's a story. Like, that's the age-old story, right? It used to be they would get college kids to do, fixed games by point shaving because it was college kids can always use more money, right? So this was obviously in the days before NIL and all that. So it was like, hey, you want to make a little extra money? You don't need to cost your team a game, but instead of winning by 10, make sure you only win by 9, and we're good, right? And then you go that way. So Jontay Porter clearly got himself in trouble with some people where he owed some money, and it was, hey, here's a way out without you maybe really aren't hurting anybody necessarily. Like, you want to help us out here. And they ultimately get caught, and he's pleading guilty, and then we'll see where it goes through the sentencing phase. Does he actually face prison time, or will this turn into some form of, all right, hey, you got to go to some form of rehab or whatever it may be. But yeah, it's a sad story in the sense of it's a sad story the way this all played out. I don't necessarily feel bad for Jontay Porter because this sounds like it was a completely self-created situation. In reality, is he has a brother who makes tens of millions of dollars, as like $30 million a year contract. You probably could have got some help through there if you needed it. You probably didn't need to go this direction, but so he kind of, as I'm fond of saying, you made your bed, now lie in it. Whatever comes your way, you deserve, because you did this to yourself.
Well, and here's the thing is that, like, for anybody who's just checking in and you're caught up in the swell of NBA free agency, and maybe you missed the Jontay Porter story from, what was it, 6 weeks ago or so that we initially covered it. His NBA career is over. His professional career is over. He's been banned from the league because of this. And I think the league wanted to make sure that this was going to be the example. They were going to set the precedent here that was going to, and it's a precedent that it's already been established in professional sports in general, but of what happens if players are caught betting on sports or doing things to try to determine the outcome of a game. So this ultimately will serve as the warning moving forward for everybody else. Unfortunately, it does cost Jontay Porter a lot. And like you said, Keith, you have to wonder if there were alternative paths that could have avoided this ultimate outcome. So unfortunate in that regard, but hopefully this isn't something that we have to deal with again in this sport.
Yeah, and I hope if he really does have a gambling addiction and those things, that he gets the help he needs now. So
Absolutely.
Whatever punishment he faces, when he's on the other side of that, he can lead a productive life and become a productive member of society and figure all that stuff out. But you're absolutely right. The NBA was going to come down on him hard because they want to make sure everybody knows, hey, you saw what we did to a guy who was a two-way player and barely involved. Like, don't mess around, because we'll do it to you too. It'll be anybody who comes down the pike. Because I really feel like people are like, well, what if this was LeBron or Steph Curry or something? One, it wouldn't be. Right. So that's the other thing. Like, that's the first thing. Like, let's stay.
It's not worth it for those guys that are making so much.
Yeah. Let's stay somewhat rooted in reality here. But I think they would have hammered them the same way and said, hey, sorry, can't do this. Like, you cannot do these things. Like, this is, because if we start going down this path, it all loses relevance and meaning. And all of a sudden it's like, why do we even bother? Because all this stuff is this way. A couple of people have asked, like, so let's say he has to do a year of prison or whatever it is, or like he's tied to parole and community service and things like that. What happens? And I said, can he come back? I'm sure down the line, every player can always apply for reinstatement to the NBA. I don't know that would happen. Could he surface in another professional league? Sure. The challenge is going to be getting a FIBA letter of clearance, where FIBA's like, all right, we think this guy, learned his lesson and now he's, moving on, and we can do that. But yeah, I don't know. Well, I kind of think we're done seeing him play professional basketball in any meaningful place that's like covered under the FIBA, laws and all those things.
Sure.
Maybe there might be, there's plenty of leagues out there that don't fall under FIBA, and maybe he falls into one of those. But yeah, I think we're probably whenever this wraps up, he'll just be a footnote into, hey, remember that guy who got banned? Like, here's what's going on, and that'll be where it goes.
All right, Keith, let's get into.
Let me do one other piece of quick news here, because he's a sometimes listener of the show. Matt Lloyd with the Timberwolves. He was the senior VP of basketball operations, got promoted to general manager under Tim Connolly.
So, very cool
promotion for Matt Lloyd. Matt used to be here in Orlando. He's very extremely great at what he does and a great guy. He does occasionally listen and watch the show, so wanted to shout that out to Matt. Congratulations from us here on your promotion. Well earned there in Minnesota.
Absolutely. Congratulations on that. Big time news. All right, let's get to our tiers here. NBA tiers. Keith, let's start with the Eastern Conference. We're going to rank these teams into tiers. I have a feeling the way the East is going to shake out. Now, obviously, it is still mid-July. I guess now we can officially call it mid-July. We're getting there. It's July 10th as we're recording this. Moves can still happen. There may be more things that occur. Unfortunately, injuries can still happen as well. So just putting the disclaimer on here, these tiers may look different come October. So let's start at the top. I'm assuming there is a tier of 1 at the top, Keith, and you happen to know that team fairly well.
Yeah, it's funny. So I want to say 2. We may just feel differently about a team in a month or
For
2
sure.
months or 3 months, right? We may, as the season's starting, feel like, you know what, I actually really kind of like what that team did instead of being down on them right now. In addition to, right, there could still be moves to come. So what I did was I broke the tiers into 4. There's title contenders, there's playoff teams, there's play-in tournament teams, and then there's lottery teams. It is not going to slot perfectly into each one. In the East, it happened to for me that I had 4 kind of title contenders, 4 playoff teams, 2 play-in teams, and then 5 teams that are in lottery range. It did not in the West. Spoiler alert, that was not that easy in the West. It took a little while. So in the East, so what I did was I put 4 teams in the title contender tier: Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee. And I ranked them in that order within the tier. For me, I have the Celtics. They've done nothing for me to take them out of the top. I trust New York the most because I trust the health track record more for them than I do the Sixers. But the Sixers are wildly loaded with talent. Maybe still have a move in them if they do something with KJ Martin in a balloon payment and some sort of sign and trade, or sign him now and trade him later kind of deal. And then the Bucks, it's Giannis and Dame and a bunch of really good players. It went really poorly last year, but I can't quit that much talent.
Yeah, after seeing it for a few years with the Bucks, I'm a little concerned. Now they've had a couple of disappointing seasons in a row. I think when I look at this, to me, and I am like the biggest Knicks fan in the world. To me, it's the Celtics, and then I have the Knicks in a next tier of their own, and then everybody else falling in after that. I do think with the moves the Knicks made, I don't know if they're going to be right there on Celtics level, but I think they've made enough improvements. They've got the defensive identity that they need right now. I know they're looking for another big. I believe ultimately they will find one. And so I have them a tier above the rest of the Eastern Conference. And then after that, I feel like I'm taking shots at Milwaukee here, but I think I like the upside of the 76ers with Tyrese Maxey and Paul George and Joel Embiid, and you plug in the right pieces around them, and off you go. So I think the next tier would include the Sixers, the Cavs, the Magic, the Bucks in some order there. I think that's the next group for me, but I've got Boston, then New York, and then that next kind of group right behind them.
It's always better when we don't just agree, right? Like it's
for sure.
It makes for a much better show. All right, so we'll go. You kind of went into your next grouping, so I'll go to my next grouping. These are the 4 teams I feel pretty good will be playoff teams. And I had them in this order. I had them: Cleveland, Orlando, Indiana, and Miami. That was the order I put them in. You could flip-flop Orlando and Cleveland. I'd have no real issue there. Maybe Kentavious Caldwell-Pope pushes the Magic over the Cavs. They were close to beating the Cavs last year, but Cavs were banged up. But those 2 teams, I'm there, with that. And then I think Indiana, it feels rough because it feels like they were just in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, why? But it feels like they benefited from a fortunate path a little bit more than others, right? They had some injured teams in front of them. They got there. Still like the Pacers. They could definitely move up. But they didn't really add much this summer. They basically are running it back with the same team, which is okay because they were a pretty good team. Pascal Siakam was a form of almost pre-agency, right? Where you benefit from them down the stretch last year. And then the Heat for me they're just better than the other teams that are left. But I didn't love their summer. Losing Caleb Martin for nothing. Didn't do anything big. You're kind of running it back with the same guys. Alec Burks that's okay for a pickup, but there's nothing that I love that Miami did, and that's why I've got them below everybody else. Plus, I'm also pricing in. You don't seem to really care about the regular season all that much. So if you're going to kind of put them in a spot, that's where I would put them at the bottom of that playoff tier.
Yeah, I misspoke. I don't think I said Indiana in my grouping, which I would have had them in that kind of that playoff group. Milwaukee, Cleveland, Orlando, Indiana. I've got them all right there. I think, and it could just be the optics of the offseason kind of impacting me more than it should, but Jimmy Butler's a year older. I think I actually have Miami down one tier from the rest of that group, and it doesn't feel good because they just tend to find a way. But I didn't love their summer, and I don't know, what that's going to look for them this next year, how things are going to shape out. So I've got them one tier below in that next group, kind of sandwiched in there. I don't want to dig too far into it, but it's like them and the Hawks kind of right there in a group, and then we kind of get into the yeah. They'd actually, this is the most difficult part to rank of the Eastern Conference is after you get out of the playoff teams, it's like it's the Cooper Flag group. It's the what, and trying to order them is good luck.
Flailing for flag.
Flailing for flag. I like it.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll come up with something good. Pooping for Coopin. Who knows?
His last name is Flag.
Yeah.
You go to a poop joke. Okay.
Hey, I'm nothing if not a 14-year-old boy at heart. I've never grown up in maturity. I have all the same hobbies I had then. I like all the same things I liked then, including poop jokes. I think are still funny. When for me, the two, it's almost like, well, somebody has to be the 10th seed. Someone has to make the play-in tournament. So I picked Atlanta and Toronto. I think Atlanta still has Trae Young. Still, the roster's not great, but it's not terrible. And Toronto has, I think, a team that is, at least on paper right now, better than those other teams in the Eastern Conference. So I had those two teams. Yeah, then you get into the bottom of the conference. And in the bottom of the conference, I ranked them out in this order. This is like best team to worst team. Yeah. Chicago, Detroit, Charlotte, Brooklyn, and Washington. Feel pretty confident about putting Chicago there. Now, again, this is with the roster as we know it today. If they trade away Zach LaVine and Nick Vucevic, I'll drop them even further. But I think what's more interesting is you've got like Detroit's kind of on their way up. Charlotte could be. I think Charlotte could be a team that maybe they're not great, but they're an improved team. But like Brooklyn and Washington, I think there's a chance they're fighting it out for the very worst record in the entire NBA this year. I'm just not sure, where they're going. That's not a criticism. It's not a bad thing. When I started doing out cap space projections, a big part of that is projecting draft order. And I use some different projection systems that are out there that are updated with new rosters and the like to land on a number. Brooklyn right now would go into next year's draft with 4 first-round picks by most of the projection systems. So, talk about trying to reset things on the fly very, very quickly. They'd also be one of the handful of teams that I project right now to have cap space next summer as well. So could be a quick turnaround for the Nets. But I think they're going to be absolutely awful next season. I don't see a path to them being good or even play-in tournament good. Same with the Wizards. I think will be pretty bad. And then, then it's kind of Detroit, Charlotte, Chicago, whatever order you want. It doesn't really matter.
I'm right there with you on the rankings. And I'll tell you what, we aren't taking shots at Washington or Brooklyn here. If anything, it's a bummer for Chicago, right? Like they're finally picking a direction and we're still saying they're not quite going to be bad enough though, unfortunately, to get in the mix for that top pick. So but again, if you trade Zach LaVine, if you trade Vucevic, that changes a lot for Chicago, and that can kind of put them into that mix, I think, which should incentivize them to potentially make that type of a move if they can get it into the mix there. What's their pick situation for next year for Chicago? I don't recall off the top of my head.
They have,
because I know, don't they still owe San Antonio?
Yeah, they do owe San Antonio a pick, but I think they have theirs free and cleared next year. No, 1 to 10 they keep it. 11 to 30 goes to the Spurs.
So even more incentive to bottom out
a little. Yeah, 1 to 8 the year after that. 1 to 8 the year after that. So and then they have if the next time if Portland makes the playoffs anytime in the next 4 years, they also have Portland's pick coming in as an extra pick. So,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel pretty confident they're going to be a bottom 10 team. I don't see a path towards the Bulls being very good next year. I'll say this too. Bottom 4 right now, July 10th is where you want to be for me. It's Cooper Flagg, it's Ace Bailey, it's Dylan Harper, and it's VJ Edgecombe. Nolan Traore, you could put into that mix too, if you really want to. I think those 4 guys though that I mentioned, Flagg, Bailey, Harper, and Edgecombe, those guys, I think you could put them in a spot where if you told me they were in this past draft that just happened a couple weeks ago, I think they would have come off the board 1 through 4. That's how much I believe in those guys. I think they're all very, very good.
And Flag just lit it up against Team USA. So,
yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if I said it here. I had someone text me, like a front office person, who said, "Start tanking now." Like that's how good he was. Like he was so good in those practices and scrimmages. Like just start tanking right now. Like that's going to be where teams are at with this kid.
The tank race is going to be something to watch this year. All right, let's jump over to the West. Keith, I think the West has a lot of parity. I think there's a lot of depth here in this conference, but I am ready to crown a new leader, a tier of their own. OKC takes another step forward. I think with Isaiah Hartenstein in the mix, the moves that they've made, they added Alex Caruso, move over Denver. I think OKC is the head of the class in the Western Conference, and I'm putting them in a tier by themselves.
Yep. So I have them at the top of my title contender tier, also 4 deep in the Western Conference. But the reason I have them at the top is they got better, and I don't know that any of the other 3 teams necessarily did. In my other 3 teams, in order, were Dallas, Minnesota, and Denver. I have Denver last of that group. Denver, I mean, one, they got beat by Minnesota last year, and Denver got worse. They're not a better team going into next season. I like the Dario Saric pickup for them. I really like the De'Ron Holmes draft pick. But losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope hurts. This was a team that's had bench struggles. They still don't really have a backup point guard. We'll see. I think we're all kind of assuming that'll eventually be Russell Westbrook, but we'll see. But Dallas, I'm going to respect the fact that they were in the finals last year. I think picking up Klay Thompson and Najee Marshall are 2 really good pickups for them. I think those guys are both better than Josh Green and Derek Jones Jr. So I think Dallas got better. And then I think Minnesota is just going to be good again. I was not in on the Timberwolves last year. I didn't even have them as a playoff team at the end of the day because you had to pick somebody to miss. So I didn't have them in there. And, clearly I was very, very wrong. I've done a complete 180. I'm fully in on the Timberwolves, and I like their offseason pickups. I like getting Rob Dillingham. I think he's going to help them. I think he'll be a good player for the Wolves. But yeah, I'm with you with the Thunder, man. I think that's the best team in the West. I'm going to go as far to say this. I think they might have the best regular season record in the entire NBA next season.
Young legs.
I think they will. Yeah, and I think Boston coming off the finals, 3 guys going to the Olympics, Porzingis not playing till sometime around the holidays, and they have a shortened off season because they start early because they go to Dubai. I think they might kind of ease into the season a little bit. And I think if you finish the first couple months, a few games over 500 rather, then I think you start to turn into, okay, then they can turn it on and pick it up. But by that point, you may not be catching. But I think they're also at a point where it's like, we don't need to push for best overall record anymore.
Right.
We don't necessarily need that. Maybe they get there anyway, but we'll see. But yeah, I think the Thunder could be the best team in the regular season next season.
So I'm with you overall. If we're just labeling them championship contenders, they're all in the mix. I do have the Thunder as right now the leader of that group. But I'll tell you this: there's a team that's sneaking into the group for me.
Okay.
And it's OKC, Denver, Minnesota, Dallas are in there. Now I'm not going to say that's the order they're in there, but those 4 are in there. And I'm going to get a little spicy here. Sacramento is making the jump up.
Ooh,
Sacramento is making the jump up, I believe, in the DeMar DeRozan edition. I think he fills enough of the problems that they had last season. They were the worst free throw shooting team in the NBA last year. DeMar DeRozan gets to the line and he connects at a high rate there. Fox and Sabonis were their two highest free throw attempt guys, and both of them shot poorly from the line. So I think just that uptick that you're going to see in scoring from the free throw line. I think the ability for Malik Monk and potentially De'Aaron Fox to be off the floor and the offense not fall to pieces, I think that's going to matter. I think Sacramento is going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder after the way things went down last season. I've got the Kings moving up into that group.
I love it, man. Last year, the Boston Celtics set a record with a 123.2 offensive rating. I think the Kings could beat that this coming season. I think they're going to lean heavy offense, go. I think they're going to score a ton of points. I'm super excited as an East Coast guy. I can already tell you they're my West Coast team to go to because, if you're watching games at midnight, 1 a.m. wrapping up, give me 140 to 135 shootout every single day. That'll keep me awake and keep me entertained all the way till the end. I'm super excited to see what the Kings become. I can't wait. My team, Memphis, is the team I think could crack into that group. I think collectively a lot of people have kind of forgotten about the Grizzlies because we wrote them off pretty early last year. Well, they start out like 0-8 or something like that. They were awful to begin the season. I mean, absolutely terrible. And we all kind of wrote them off and said, it is what it is. But next year coming back, man, you got John Morant and Desmond Bane back. That's already like two better additions than almost anybody else made this summer. Getting those guys back. You got Jaren Jackson Jr., Marcus Smart will be back to either be at worst the third guard, maybe a starting wing, small forward, small ball-ish, do everything player. You found Vince Williams. You found G.G. Jackson. Those guys are both really, really good for you last year. Got to solve the big man rotation a little bit. If Zach Edey can step in and give them 20 minutes a night as a rookie of fairly solid center play, let's go. I am all in on Memphis. I think they'll vault themselves right back into that title contender tier where, let's say one of these teams is a little older than what we thought of that group, where they just don't play as well, where they have injuries. I think Memphis takes over that. They're at the top of my next group. So these are the 4 sure playoff teams. I have Phoenix next. And just with Phoenix, I think they kind of are what they are. They're a pretty good regular season team, but they don't have a ton of depth. Their big three don't fit great together. They'll win enough games to be a playoff team, but I'm not fully sold on them. Then I have your Lakers next, right behind them. I'm not pandering to you here. I wouldn't do that. I wish I could drop them down in the lottery tier, but that would be disingenuous. I think right now I get it. There's a lot of frustration with the Lakers. We're still a pretty good playoff team last year. Still have a lot of solid talent. There's still you still got to beat LeBron and AD, right? Like that's very hard to do on a night-to-night basis when they're there. Will those two guys play as many games as they played a year ago? I don't know. That's why I have a little bit. It's like the same spot in the standings almost, but just a little further back from those other teams. And then I have Sacramento just behind it, just because as much as I love the offense and I love you putting them where you put them, I'm not fully sold on, are they going to get enough stops when they play another really good team? I think Sacramento is going to be the team like they play Portland or Washington or maybe what Utah looks like they might be. They might beat those teams by 30 and drill them. But then you play a team like the Thunder and they might get beat by 10 or 12 just because they can't get enough stops. Like I think they're going to be good, but that's why I have them at the end of the playoff picture.
All right. I'm with you on the Memphis thing. I think obviously it's very early, but seeing Zach Edey play well, I would say dominated or anything like that, but play well when matched up against Walker Kessler, who's a legitimate NBA center, that's a really good sign for the Grizzlies. And so I do think they become the forgotten team, but they're also the team that jumps right back into the mix. I'm with you on the Lakers. They won 47 games last year. That typically would not be a play-in team, but Western Conference. Welcome to the West. So I do think that they can be better than what people are thinking, but right now there's a lot of negativity around them because they haven't done anything. They haven't done anything over the summer. So we'll see what happens there. I'm curious though, what do you make of like Golden State, New Orleans? Where are you slotting? You're slotting those teams back because I would put those teams in that same tier in this kind of big group with Phoenix, with the Lakers, with the Pels, the Warriors. I kind of put them all together. Where are you slotting in the Pelicans? And are you maybe a Brandon Ingram trade changes your slotting here too?
Yeah, so much like if the Lakers make a big move, they could jump up a notch or two, right? Like if they made a big trade. Same thing with the Pelicans. And I think the Pelicans they're kind of incomplete right now with their roster, right? I've been saying it, like you get kind of an incomplete with a little bit of a frowny face from me. Like that's where I'm at because it's like you're not fully there. Like what like you didn't fully finish out your off season yet. So let's see. But right now, this is my play-in tournament team group. So this one's bigger than it is in the East, but that's because it's the Warriors, the Pelicans, the Rockets. They still have the Clippers in there because there's still a lot of talent on that Clippers team.
Sure, they lost Paul
they're
George,
no longer right. They would the last few years have been in the title contender group, and I've been really hard time quitting them. Well, I'm out. I'm all the way out. And what really sealed that for me was if we're pulling Kawhi out of the Olympics, I don't know. Like it's just you lose him for a large chunk of the regular season, forget it. James Harden is not that guy anymore to be a completely offense unto himself that can carry you to 40 plus wins by himself. Nowhere near that player anymore. I like what they did to replace Paul George within reason, but that could all of a sudden become all right. Let's move Terrence Mann. Let's move Zubac. Let's try to really put ourselves in a spot where we can flip this thing pretty quickly if we need to. Let's go get off these salaries and just start over. That could be where the Clippers go in that direction. Now they have no reason to tank because the Thunder own their pick, or they have swap rights, so they have control of their pick this year. So they're not going to fully tank. I just think there's a world where they're just not very good. So Golden State, New Orleans, two teams I like, but Warriors, I'm just kind of, you're okay, right? You're not great. You're not terrible. You're just kind of a play-in team right now. New Orleans, I think there's a world where I push them up ahead of several teams if they make another move or two. And then Houston, I love what Houston's building. I just don't think we're quite there yet. I think they kind of know they're not quite there yet. That's why they didn't make any real all-in moves or anything like that this season. I think they know we're a year away from being whatever it is we're going to be, but moving up the list. But those are my four teams in that group.
Yeah, Houston, I was a little surprised they didn't make a big dramatic move so far this summer. I think they tried, but that move wasn't there. So they're going to be patient, and they have the ability to be patient in this situation. I do think New Orleans got better with DeJounte Murray. I think that he's a guy that can definitely help them, particularly if they can find a way to move CJ McCollum. Not that it's going to be easy. We know there could be a Brandon Ingram trade coming. So New Orleans really does have that big question mark by them for me in terms of where they're ultimately going to slot in. The Warriors, I think you can make the argument, maybe even got better since losing Clay, the pieces that they've added, especially if DeAnthony Melton can stay healthy. But Draymond's getting a year older. Steph's getting a year older. I'm going to want to see it before I push that team up too much further. But I love the pick. Again, I love the pick of the Rockets. I think they are, pun intended, a team on the rise. And then we get into the bottom three.
Yep.
Utah, San Antonio, Portland. I think San Antonio is maybe knocking on the door to get into that next group. And that's just my belief in Victor Wembanyama. It's possible that he just becomes that cheat code this next year, and solving that problem becomes it's already difficult, but it starts leading to a lot of wins. And of that group of three right now, San Antonio is the team that I think could make the jump up into the next tier and could be, circling around the play-in next season.
Completely agree. I think for right now, my order there is San Antonio by themselves. They're like a bad team that is not horrific, right? Like it's going to be hard to win games like for them. But I think getting Chris Paul, who's just going to keep them organized, He's going to have guys in the right spot. He's going to hold guys accountable. Harrison Barnes is going to help them quite a bit. Wembanyama he's unbelievable. Like I said to somebody today, Wembanyama may change everything we think about roster building, where it was 3 stars. Now can you get by with 2 stars? It might just be you just need him and then a handful of the right guys around him, and that's you're great and good to go for years. I think they're just a year away from being fully like in the mix to make the play-in tournament, and a lot of that has to do with how good the Western Conference is. Utah, no, we don't even know what the hell they are. Like we no concept of what this team's going to be. They're going to keep marketing, or they're going to trade them, or they're going to renegotiate and extend them, or they're going to use cap space to go get Brandon Ingram and try to be good. Who knows? They may be the one team that changes more than anybody on this list, because they could still make another 2 or 3 moves where it's like should put Utah up into the playoff territory. Like they have the ability to do that. So who knows with them? And then Portland's they're bad, but much like Washington and Brooklyn, it's okay. Like this is the intention, right? The intention has been be bad. Like you're gonna figure it out. And if at the end of the year you come away with one of those 4 guys I said, all of a sudden you're like, I feel pretty good about being pretty bad, right? Like this all paid off. Like we're good. Let's keep it moving. And then it becomes, do we want to be bad again next year? Because there's a couple kids in next year's draft at the top with Cam Boozer and AJ DeBonsa who look like they're going to be super top prospects in 2026. I don't know. That starts to get to be, hey, we kind of did the bad thing for 2 years. Do we really want to do it for a third? We'll see. But yeah, I think it's okay that Portland right now looks like easily, for my money, the worst team in the West. I'll say this, though. If Utah trades Markkanen and Kessler,
they can get
goes
there.
Like young, they'll be just as bad as Portland will be, if not worse.
Yeah. They have the ability to get there. They can make that leap, take that tumble, whatever. They're all trying to fly the Cooper flag, and we'll see who ultimately gets there. But I do have Portland at the bottom, Utah, San Antonio at the top of that group, with them potentially getting into the play-in mix, especially if we have a situation like last year where Memphis just kind of they took a season off, right? Memphis went on sabbatical for a season last year. Now they're going to be back because who they had filling in for them last year clearly was not really what this team is. So we'll see. If somebody does that again this year, then certainly that increases San Antonio's odds of jumping up.
Yeah, let me see if I can look it up real quick. But I mean, it was an absurd amount of guys that even played in a game for them. They had 33 players play in an NBA game. You have 18 guys on an NBA roster if you count the 3 two-way guys. Like that's
Keith,
that's insane.
At the end of the season, I went to the Grizzlies and the Lakers, and I'm in Memphis, and they're handing out the injury report. I felt bad for their ink cartridges. Like the Memphis injury, it was just a mile long of all these players that were out. You're looking at it going, who is in? Who's playing? And then they gave the Lakers a real run that night. But it was insane how many injuries the Grizzlies suffered. So I do expect them to bounce back in a big way this year, and they'll be back there in the mix.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm with you. I think they have a chance really to be pretty good this year. I'm super high on Memphis. I'm probably going to be higher on them than just about anybody else that covers the league as a whole, just because I believe in the talent. And I think I'm going to go a step further. I think John Morant has the comeback season, and by the end of next year, we're I am in on John Morant again. This dude figured it out. I'm hoping that's how it all comes together. I just
thought for a second there you were going to say MVP mix for next year.
Not yet.
Too spicy.
Yeah, that's a little step too far. All NBA? Yeah, maybe. I love watching him play. Now I watch him play in utter fear because he looks like he's going to get broken in half on half of these drives he makes. But yeah, I love him. So yeah, and then the good thing is we've got months to workshop the tanking kind of puns, so we can do lag for flag, right?
I like
if
it.
you lag behind for flag. If Ace Bailey comes up and it's people are like, yeah, we're gonna Failey for Bailey, right? That could be
Oh, there you go.
so yeah, we'll figure it out, right? We'll fall off the edge comb, like maybe
Oh,
that's
there
where
you go. I like that one. I like that one. Fall on your face for Ace.
yeah, there
That's a
it
little
is.
too
It's a good
long, a
one.
little cumbersome,
Yeah,
but we'll get there. We got plenty of time.
yeah, yeah. We'll have to come up with one for Dylan Harper. I can't. Nothing's jumping to mind right now.
Oh, geez. Something around Sharper for Harper.
yeah. I was thinking something around
Oh, I got
Dylan.
it.
Let's hear
Illin
it.
for Dylan.
Dylan for Dylan. Yeah,
Yep.
that's where I was circling it. It just wasn't coming to me yet. So. But yeah, man, those I'm going to be watching a lot of college basketball this year because I think those four guys are going to be really, really good. And there's a bunch of other guys I like in this class who I like Nolan Traore overseas. I think he's going to be really good. There's a couple other kids who came out of Montverde. Liam McNeely's going to UConn. Derek Queen's going, I believe it's Maryland. Asa Newell's going to Georgia. I think those guys are all going to be really good too. I think this is a chance for teams are going to look at this and they're going to be like, holy cow, we wish we had some extra picks. And that could lead to more trades. It could be, this could be one where we see early trade season opens in December. We might see some teams be like, let's start making moves now because we don't want to wait till the trade deadline to blow it up. Like, let's do it today so we can, start losing games right away. And I think as long as teams can't come out and openly say, hey, we're trying to lose games to get Cooper flag. But as long as you make sure your media is educating your fans behind that, you're in a pretty good place.
For sure. Fans get it. This is not 20 years ago where it was, these teams can't tank. Their fan base won't accept it. No, they do. Fans get behind it. Look what happened in Philly.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. They got really behind it to the point where it didn't like they were ever going to be good again. And then everybody got fired. So, no. That's a whole other thing. But yeah. All right, that was fun.
All right. That was fun.
We'll do this again, obviously, before the season starts because we'll have better sense. But it's fun, a week or so into free agency to kind of be like, where do we kind of see teams right now?
For sure.
And it kind of is almost instructive too, because it gives you a little, all right, New Orleans, let's do something else, right? Push yourselves up. Like you can, like, let's go get something done. Like, I think things like that make it a little fun.
For sure. Definitely. All right, everybody, make sure you do subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on those notifications as well. Till next time, see ya and stay safe.